Thank you, Commissioner.
Good morning to all of you that are here, that have responded to the Electoral Commission's invitation to this press briefing. We welcome all of you to Election House. I would also like to invite those of you that are joining us virtually. We have called this press briefing in order to cover a few things. The first is, one, to talk about the implications of the proclamation of the date of elections, that is the 27th of October in 2021. We also would like to give you an update about where the Electoral Commission is in terms of what it said it would do, that is approach a competent court, in order to make its pleadings with regard the response to its report that it got from Justice Mseneke. This, of course, is also an opportunity to not only inform, but to clarify a lot of confusion that might be there. This is an opportunity where you have all of us, and we can explain as much as we can, so that through the extended reach of the media, people can have an opportunity to understand as well as possible what it is that is going on, how it impacts on all of them. So that is what we're going to try and do today. Before I do, allow me to introduce the people that are sitting with me here. On my right-hand side, there is Mr. Glenn Mashinini, who is the chairperson of the Electoral Commission. On his right is the vice chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Ms. Janet Love. On her right is Commissioner Musutu Miepia. And then if you come back to me again, on my left is the Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Sai Mamabulo. And on his left is the Deputy CEO responsible for electoral operations. And on his left is the Acting Deputy CEO responsible for outreach. In areas in the room, you have members of EXCO. We also have members of senior management, and of course, as I've said, there are people that are joining us virtually. Colleagues, I am going to ask you to keep your masks on always throughout this time. I am going to ask in this room. With those words, and of course I always forget to introduce myself, but I assume that I don't need introduction. I am Nomso Masugu. I am one of the 5 commissioners in the Electoral Commission, and my job today is to steer you through the program. Chairperson, let me invite you to make your input, to read your statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Program Director, Dr. Masugu, and greetings to my fellow commissioners present, the Chief Electoral Officer, and all the officials from the Electoral Commission present here, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. The Commission has, I beg your pardon. The Commission has taken note of yesterday's proclamation of the 2021 local government elections by the Honorable Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. The proclamation follows legally sanctioned consultation processes between the Minister and the Commission. We appreciate the constitutional and statutory obligation of the Honorable Minister to proclaim the election date in the context where there is currently no court order on the deferment of the municipal elections. The proclamation triggers the requirement for the Commission to publish an election timetable. The Commission will undertake the activities which must be performed in terms of the timetables until a competent court orders differently. The election timetable spans 85 days and lays down the key dates and deadlines for various electoral milestones until the voting day of the 27th of October 2021. The election timetable will be published today, 4th of August 2021. The first legal consequence of the proclamation is to close the voters' roll for the purposes of the election on the 27th of October 2021. And this means no new voters may be admitted to the voters' roll for the proclaimed election date, and this is inclusive of all forms of registration, that is both physical as well as our electronic registration. The current voters' roll stands at 25.7 million registered voters. Since the introduction of electronic registration, there has been 17,964 successful registration. Proclamation of the election date also opens the candidate nomination process, and this window will conclude on the 23rd of August 2021 at 1700 hours. Registered political parties and independent candidates intending to contest on the 2021 municipal elections must submit their lists of candidates and nomination documents via the following channels. First, using the Electoral Commission's online candidate nomination system, and secondly, delivered by hand to the offices of local representative of the Commission in the intended municipality of contest. The Commission has determined amounts of the election deposit for candidature in the forthcoming elections. This determination followed a process of publishing proposed amounts for public comment earlier in the month of June 2021. The deposit to be prescribed for the forthcoming elections are as follows: 3,500 in respect of election in a metropolitan municipality, and 2,000 rands in respect of an election in a local municipality ward, and 1,000 rand in respect of an election in a district municipality, and 1,000 rand in respect of an election in a ward if the party is not contesting the PR election or an independent ward candidate. Whilst the Commission prepares for the elections on the 27th of October, it has launched an application out of the Constitutional Court. The application is direct to the Constitutional Court because of a number of reasons, primary of which being that the matter raises weighty constitutional matters involving the balancing of rights enshrined in the Constitution. And this court application is an extraordinary one and presumably unprecedented. The issues which are core to the application have a bearing on political rights, a right to life, bodily and psychological integrity, and access to health of citizens of the country. The application will undoubtedly offer the Constitutional Court another opportunity to contribute to the evolving jurisprudence of our constitutional order. The application is also launched on an urgent basis because there is a need for certainty in the preparations for the municipal elections. And the Commission and the electoral stakeholders are currently in an untenable position where preparations are proceeding for the election on the 27th of October 2021, whilst at the same time anticipating the outcome of the Constitutional Court application. The nature of the relief sought by the Commission is largely predicated on the impossibility to perform a constitutional obligation, which is the conduct of an election of municipal council by the 1st of November 2021 due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the measures government instituted to curb the spread of the virus. And the main relief can be broadly described as follows. Beg your pardon. Firstly, that declaring that the Commission may hold the forthcoming local government elections outside of the 90-day period required by Section 1592 of the Constitution and Section 24(2) of the Local Government Municipal Structures Act of 1998. And secondly, directing the Commission to hold the forthcoming local government election by no later than the end of February 2022. And thirdly, authorizing the Minister of Cocta to withdraw the notice calling for forthcoming local government election and setting 27th of October as the date on which they will be held, and the issue a fresh notice calling setting a date before the 28th of February 2022 for the forthcoming local government election. And in addition to the above, the Commission also seeks the relief that alternative relief in the event it is not successful on its preferred option. The alternative relief essentially asks the Constitutional Court to declare that failure to hold the municipal elections by the 1st of November is unconstitutional and invalid, and suspending the declaration of invalidity until the end of February 2022. For the court to assume and we further seek that the court to assume ongoing supervisory jurisdiction, requiring the Commission to report to the court periodically on its progress in arranging constitutionally compliant local government elections in February 2022. And also an order that the municipal councils remain competent until newly elected councils are declared elected, to avoid uncertainty about the legal status of the current municipal councils. And this court application affects the rights of all citizens of the country, and thus everybody has an interest in the proceedings that will evolve in the Constitutional Court. And in order to facilitate access to the court process, the Commission will immediately place the founding papers on its website as it transmits by electronic means the application to all registered parties. In conclusion, the Commission wishes to assure South Africans that it remains firmly committed to conducting an election in terms of the constitutional standards, and it wishes to do so in the shortest possible and reasonable period, while preserving the rights to life, bodily and psychological integrity, and access to health of the citizens of the country. Program Director, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. At this point in time, I'm going to invite questions, comments When you raise your hand, please tell us your name and the media house from which you come. I see a tentative hand. Please, sir.
From Hawaii. I just want to check. I know that you want to have the elections no later than February next year, but we have a tentative date that is maybe looking at. Would it be sometime towards the end of this year or in the beginning of this year, or what would it be that would determine a date that would be suitable for the IEC? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Natasha?
Mr. Nashini, my question is just for you, just a clarity-seeking question. So according to my knowledge, the IEC has a threefold mandate in terms of the constitution to organize, manage, deliver the elections in stipulated time, ensure free and fair elections, which can't happen under COVID-19, and to declare the results within the stipulated period. Now, there's a narrative that's out there that you're in violation of the constitutional obligation of delivering the elections. So will this not pose a challenge in terms of your court's application to the constitutional courts? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bali?
Bali Stefani from News Africa. I just want to find out when exactly did the IEC launch this application? Is it something you've done this morning, yesterday? Can we just get clarity there? When it comes to the proclamation of the elections, like you said, that it means now that the voting roll has been closed. When you look at your application, I know that you have seen anything, but going to the Constitutional Court, should you be declined on asking it to postpone this year's elections, what would this mean for the voters' roll? Is there a way that you can ask for that to be reopened? And also, looking at, should the Constitutional Court decline once more, is there still time to ask Parliament to intervene and to amend the Constitution to have these elections postponed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see anyone. Shall we take those as the first set of questions? I am going to hand over to you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much for the questions. The end of February date is the target date, and we are hopeful that it would, if granted, it would then enable us to proceed on the last Wednesday of the month. And regarding the question about whether the Commission is not already violating the law, we would like to believe that we remain firmly committed in law abiding. So the Commission has not exercised any activity that at this stage, in our view, are in violation. What we've indicated is that the circumstances that are extraordinary before us, which is the pandemic condition, have actually impeded our ability to be in a position that we can say, up until now, all our activities would actually be found compliant with the requirements of the Constitution, especially on the issue of the registration and the pandemic. Under these conditions, we are unable to perform. So we are therefore taking these and the subsequent steps that follow after the proclamation that have to be met, that we will continue to experience challenges as the Commission, together with our political stakeholders, who also will have their own challenges in being able to conduct the subsequent steps, such as the candidate nomination processes. And therefore, our view is that we believe that the Musineke report has enabled us to be in a position to take to the Concord our submission that it is not possible under these circumstances for us to discharge our responsibility. However, as matters stand, the elections have been declared and we are opening the timetable as per the prescripts of our laws. So we don't believe we are acting in violation whatsoever. And regarding the issue of when are we filing, my understanding is that this afternoon we would be filing. As far as the affidavit and all the supporting documentation, I can indicate that I've already signed all those documents. So it's a matter of when they then compiled and packaged and then delivered. Now, the question regarding whether if the Concord does decline, I think it is something that we believe we have a very clear and reasonable case to present to the Concord, and one would not wish to be speculative about the outcome of that process. And so what one can say is, yes, it is true that in the situation that is related to the impossibility to perform, the remedy options available to us, one is for the amendment of the constitutional provisions. But in the report, and ourselves have come to the conclusion that that is not feasible due to the timeframes. And secondly, if we are to talk about the requirement to meet the supermajority of 75%, that this could happen within the short space of time that is before us. And this then is what has left us with the issue, the position that then we should approach the competent court as per the recommendation and the report of the Musineke inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. May I ask the CEO, please, to speak to the matters that have to do with the voters' roll? And I've got a couple of questions here as well. Tandimayeko from Business Day asks, has the IEC determined the cost of postponing the elections? And then there is another one. To it. And then Christian Duplessis from Network 24 asked two questions. The first one is, why did the IEC not hold the voter registration weekend, seeing that the voters' roll is now closed and that the elections may take place on the 27th of October? The second question, will there be another opportunity for voters to register and update addresses for the election? I'm going to hand those over to the CEO. Commissioners, I'll come back to you for other additional comments in a minute.
The cost of postponing the elections, we are in the process of finalizing the actual cost, but I can say that it is significant. There is no escaping the issue because in part we have to extend the contracts of first-time staff. We have to invest in refreshing our communication campaign materials and so on. So we are in the process of finalizing the impact, the financial impact of the possible deferment of the elections. Why was there no registration weekend? Because at the time when the registration weekend was planned for, the epidemiological reports indicated the country was at the peak of the third wave, certainly in the Gauteng province. And there were high levels of infection, and there were relatively high levels of mortality in most of the provinces. Even as we speak, Gauteng is declining from the peak, is yet to reach the trough. And the Western Cape is now at the height of its peak, with high levels of infection and so on. So, put differently, the registration weekend was moved because the Commission was keen on protecting the life of citizens, ensuring that they are not subjected to harsh conditions of hospitalization, serious illness, and so on. Will there be any opportunity for registration? If the Commission gets the orders that it seeks from the Constitutional Court, yes, there will be a registration weekend. It is always the preferred option of the Commission for elections to be preceded by a general registration weekend where all voting stations are open and all eligible citizens can enlist themselves as voters on the voters' roll. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. I've got one more question for you. It comes from Tseho Lipule from Weekend Argus newspaper. What happens to by-elections if the IEC is granted a postponement? If you can just hang on, please, CEO. Yes, please, ma'am. Can you introduce yourself?
Sorry, from ENCA.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to ask, what are the implications if the IEC is granted the postponement? What are the implications for future elections, for future elections, in terms of time frames? And people are asking, I mean, yes, we understand in the inquiry and its recommendation, but people are asking, but we have malls working at full capacity, people having to queue anywhere for vaccines and shopping and so forth. Why isn't it that the elections can't go ahead, despite the recommendations of the inquiry?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry, and one last thing, sorry. Do you anticipate any resistance from political parties in terms of them contending or putting their arguments at the Constitutional Court? Because I do know a number of them were for the elections actually going ahead.
Thank you very much. Sir, from Power FM.
It's Daizo again from Power. Did the Commission at any point try and, speak to countries that may have held elections during this pandemic? This pandemic has almost 2 years now that we've been there. Did the Commission maybe attempt to go and find out how some of those countries worked around the pandemic, maybe to assist itself, knowing that the local government elections were also around the corner? Thank you.
Thank you very much. CEO, can you please answer the question around by-elections? And then the implications resistance. Commissioner Mieka and the Vice Chairperson, please. And the question about did you try to speak to other countries? Can we give that to the commissioners as well? Thank you.
Okay. On the issue of the by-elections that have been postponed, here are the factors that are at play. The term for municipal councils, the current municipal councils, has expired by the exclusion of time on the 3rd of August. Now a question arises as to whether you could possibly have a by-election to replace a councillor in a council whose term has expired. But it's a vexed legal question. We are taking legal advice on the matter, and we will take a position considering that legal advice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, can you please answer the questions from Slindele, the implications? And do you anticipate a resistance? And do you try to talk to other countries?
So maybe let me start with the last question about the experience in other countries. I think that you will be aware that not only has the Commission engaged with other countries, both countries that have held elections and countries that have postponed elections, again, not only within the African continent but in other parts of the world. But also there were submissions and there was research and other information provided to the Moseneke process in order that those kinds of experiences could be taken into account. It is the case that there are a number of procedural technical requirements that the Commission was able to obtain some ideas and so on, but these are not steps that would have put aside the kind of health epidemiological concerns that were raised with the Commission, and also, of course, with Justice Moseneke. In addition to that, there are experiences where elections were held, and some of these have had devastating consequences on the health of people. And as you will know, in our situation, in our constitution, we have to balance the different responsibilities. And so our approach to the court is precisely to say, this is what we're having to balance. And these constitutional obligations place us in a situation where we are asking the court for remedy that will enable us to technically deliver the election, but in a manner that is both free and fair. And part of that freedom and fairness is, of course, the health of our citizens and those who are not just involved in the queues, because I think that that's the other question that was asked by ENCA, not just in the queues for the purposes of voting, but we all know voting is also about political parties being able to engage with their own supporters and with the public at large. And it's fine that many of those political parties are using online mechanisms to communicate, but in many respects that prejudices those people who have less access to things like data, so if we are talking about a country where we want to enable the access of political parties, that again creates some difficulty for them. Regarding the position of political parties, to be fair, the political parties will only receive later on today the full submission of the Commission to the Constitutional Court, and so obviously it will be in the light of what is the detail of that submission that they will respond. I think in general, however, the political parties have expressed a great deal of concern about the prospect of having to proceed with an election on the 27th of October for a number of reasons. First of all, you have already heard that there are health challenges that are occurring in different parts of the country. Secondly, there are also constraints, some of those you've mentioned, for example, in relation to registration and the absence of a registration weekend. Thirdly, also, political parties have to proceed with a timetable that places them under a lot of pressure, for example, with candidate selection and so on, given the fact that they, like, they as part of the South African population have not been in a position to be mobilizing and going into, communities and so on for these past weeks when we have been at level 4. So these are difficulties, but I don't think that we're in a position to say how the political parties will respond to the papers until those are submitted. Thanks, Commissioner.
Thank you very much to Commissioner Mieka. Somebody asks, this is Cliff Shiko from VOWFN News, says, doesn't the IEC think this is a futile exercise? I'm assuming that they're talking about our approach to the court. And the second part of the question is, and further postponement will cause problems at local government. Commissioner Mieka?
Thank you very much. I think one has to look at the situation that we face from the lens of the pandemic and how it plays itself out specifically in our country. I think Commissioner Love has dealt extensively with what happened elsewhere and the things we have followed. Indeed, we haven't traveled, we have been here, but we have been following elections across the world in this period. The problem we face at home, and where we are fairly unique, because every country that has had to deal with a pandemic has had to deal with a pandemic in the context of their own country. We haven't seen what has happened in the US, in Brazil, and in India. We haven't. But in Africa, we are the country that is most affected. We carry a significant amount of this pandemic's burden on the continent. Secondly, we have a constitution that is very clear. Our constitution requires that an election must not just be regular. In other words, when a term expires, we must just tick a box and say another election has happened. The Constitution requires that together with the requirement of an election being regular, that election must be free and fair at the same time. And it is evident that in the context where at the time, for example, of a registration weekend that was scheduled, we were at adjusted level 4. And political activity was very limited, if not completely constrained. In circumstances such as those, it is very difficult to imagine an election that could be free and fair. And so we do not believe, to answer Shiko directly, we do not believe that this is an attempt in vain. We think it is a very responsible thing. Yes, we are not going to the court thinking all is done. That's why it is important. As the chair has indicated, we deal with what we are required to deal with, even as we seek the clarity that we seek. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Natasha?
Just one clarification question, especially for the benefit of the viewers of the listeners. So, because the registration weekend, voter registration weekend was postponed and now the voters roll is sealed, if the Constitutional Court does grant the postponement of elections, will we see another registration drive? Just that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Because I think that question has been answered, I'm going to repeat it. It's okay. I think the chairperson tried to explain that. With respect to the elections that were proclaimed yesterday, those are the elections of the 27th of October. At midnight last night, the voters' roll became sealed, which means that you cannot take any more new registrations. You cannot change your details, okay? But that is in respect to the election of the 27th of October, okay? In the event that the Constitutional Court grants the prayers of the Electoral Commission and there is a deferment, all that comes apart, what does it mean? It means that the voters' roll is opened once again. What does that mean? It means that people will once again be able to register. They will be able to update their details. Practical implication. The law provides that the Electoral Commission allows continuous registration. So people can continue to register online. They can continue registering in the other way that they do and updating their details. However, if there is an election on the 27th of October, and though that particular action has happened after midnight last night, then those corrections and those additions will not count on the 27th of October. However, they will count if we get a deferment. Okay. There is yet another question, and this one comes from a person who does not tell me who they are. They say, how do you envisage the campaigning by political parties to be affected or impacted by the changes such as postponement? Will digital campaigning be sufficient? I am going to just give that one to the CEO.
Look, I think the Commission prefers not to prescribe to political parties the methods which they need to employ in their campaign processes. The Constitution nor the law does not prescribe any modalities for campaigning. So the nature and type of campaigning should be left to the ingenuity of political parties. But that must happen within the parameters determined in terms of the law. In other words, the disaster regulations as well as the provisions of the electoral code of conduct. For as long as that campaign satisfies those parameters or happens within those parameters, is left to parties to determine what strategies make sense to them in the light of the nature of their constituency. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Slindile, you've got one more.
My question on the implications for future elections was answered. I don't know if
Okay. That is elections beyond the local government elections. Okay.
All the ones, the upcoming local government elections, if you are granted the postponement.
Okay.
Yeah, that's you.
CEO.
Our sense of the application is that it will contribute to the building up of a particular constitutional jurisprudence. So the decisions that the Constitutional Court will make will probably set a standard going forward that will guide us in future. That's why this is such an important case, because it offers the court to build on its existing jurisprudence. So, because currently the Constitution is quiet on such matters, the law is quiet on such matters, so this is an opportunity to build, as it were, a jurisprudence that we can all follow for generations to come.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I thank you, on behalf of the Electoral Commission, for your patience, for taking the time to come out here. And we hope that your being here means that you will help us and help the nation to understand what it is that it is going through right now. It is to our interest that the people of South Africa understand clearly what it is that is going on. These are complex matters, they are multi-layered, and it is something that has never happened before. And so we cannot explain enough what is going on. Please feel free to reach out to us, to any one of us, if you need any assistance in asking. There is no question that is too small or too obvious that the Electoral Commission will not welcome. But thank you so much for taking the time and being with us today. And that brings us to the close of this press conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doc. Oh. What is that?